Welcome to the Jazz Piano School podcast, where we have one mission, that is to help as many interested people around the world learn and improve at jazz piano by providing structured and organized jazz piano education. My name is Brendan Lowe. I'm your host as always. Welcome to episode number 121. This is going to be 7 ways to achieve an out or a modern improv sound. We've gotten lots of requests for this episode, so it is here. So thank you for being here. If you're looking for the podcast practice materials on this episode, which I highly recommend, this episode is absolutely fantastic. Go to jazzpianoschool.com/podcast 121. jazzpianoschool.com/podcast 121. You can download the lead sheet, the written notation, practice exercises for this podcast. If you're new to Jazz Piano School, go to Jazz Piano School to check it out. There's lots of free information, free blog, free podcast, free lick of the day, and lots of other great information on there. And if you're looking for the full audio version of this podcast, you can go to iTunes to listen to it in your car, in your, in the gym, wherever you want. And also on jazzpianoschool.com, you can get the full video version as well. All right, fantastic. So with that being said, let's dive right into the information. This is going to be the 7 ways to achieve an out or modern improv sound. So this is going to be absolutely fantastic. I love this. So diving right in. Number 1, McCoy, correct me if I'm wrong, but he put the sus sound, and what I mean by sus sound is basically the 4 in the chord for a dominant chord, for example. So if I have a F7 chord, right, moving the 3rd to the 4, this is called a sus chord, a sus sound, basically a sus 7th chord. And basically he really adopted this voicing and made it he put it into jazz. And I mean, I'm sure other people were doing it as well, but he just kind of really popularized it. So the number 1 way you can actually start to achieve more of a modern type of sound is by using this. And you'll hear all the players, like all the modern players, Aaron Goldberg, I would say he's half, Chick, Keith has, but McCoy definitely, Joey Calderazzo, oh my God, his name is forgetting me. I'm having a moment here. The guy who played with Winton, Kenny Kirkland, and these types of guys, right, with their sound, always using sus chords. So when you have dominant chords and tunes, and granted, it's hard if you have like a tune like I don't know, All of Me, right? That's an old-fashioned tune. So if I'm putting a sus chord in, if I'm playing certain types of sus voicings, like that, it's going to sound strange, right? So you kind of have to have a certain style of writing if you're playing originals or something like that, or some sort of more modern tune to actually do this. Now, I'm not saying you can't do that with, different tunes like All of Me or these old standards, but might sound out of place a little bit. But if you want to create an arrangement of it, go for it. But the first thing is to create a sus sound out of dominant voicing. So anytime you have more of a dominant chord, for example, an F7, we're going to make that a sus chord. Okay, so we're going to move the 3 to the 4. This right here, right, this creates a modern sound. It's more floaty, right, because there's this, I wouldn't say tension, but it's like unresolved color here, right? So if I were to play a blues, for example, and I turn my blues into all sus chords, right, if I don't use a single dominant chord, check out how it's going to sound, okay? Now I'm just going to comp through it. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, that's completely different than the way a blues actually, the traditional way of playing a blues. So that's creating sus sound with all dominant chords. So the first way you can actually start to do this sound is make dominant chords sus chords, right? Just take the 3rd, move it up to a 4. Okay, and all these different techniques these different types of voicings that I'm playing, basically the way you can kind of tweak your mind really, really quickly. This is an instant hack to play a sus chord, right? You can take your dominant chord and then simply play a minor chord over top of it. So what minor chord do we play? We're going to play the relative 2 minor to that dominant chord. So again, if you want a quick way to think about this, you can take your dominant chord, play a minor chord that's up a 5th from that, or you can think about it as down a 4th. So I'm playing a C minor rootless voicing over an F chord. This creates a sus sound, and you can do this in all different types of ways. If you know your 4th voicings for your C minor, you can play a C minor 4th voicing over an F in the bass, and that creates your sus sound. I mean, that's more type of 4th movement I'm not going to get into, but just playing these types of this C minor, you know, your 2 sets of 4th voicings right here will create a sus sound over that F. Now the same thing, when I moved to my B flat, I did add some reharms in there. I added my B sus movement into my B flat, and the way I was able to do that is because I took a tritone, a dominant tritone, and I just made it a sus, and then moved it down into my B flat sus. So now I'm playing an F minor rootless voicing here over B flat. Right? Cool, huh? And then I think I threw in something like this. This is a F minor rootless with the 11 in there. Okay, really nice way to do this. I love that voicing there. Octave in the B flat. Now what else did I play? All these half-step walk-downs are usually dominant chords. Right? In a blues, you just make them all sus. I slid into the 2 chord, you know, the 2 sus with the tritone sub for a D7 chord. So a D7, right? A tritone of D7 is A flat 7, so I made the A flat 7 a sus. Slid down into the G sus, C sus, and then I don't really remember what I did after that, but that is your sus sound, okay? That's how you can quickly and easily create a sus sound. Just think about the minor over top of it. Okay, so that's number 1. That's going to immediately, in all tunes you play, creating that sus sound from a dominant chord is immediately going to make your sound more modern and less old school, right? Less traditional. So the second one is going to be if you're more, if you're soloing, right? If you're improving in a group or even by yourself, you're playing solo piano, is 4th voicings, okay? I guess I'll stick with the blues. Well, I'll do a couple things, but if you're using 4ths in your left hand, this is immediately going to create a modern sound. The 4th voicing is a modern sound. That's what it is. That's what it does. It creates an atmosphere and effect of a modern sound. So if you're soloing over a blues, for example, right, and you play a 4th voicing, a 4th sus voicing, remember, we want to still create a sus sound over the chords, okay? So here's a very nice sus sound with a 4th voicing. And again, most of the time your 4th voicings will give you sus sounds, right? Now, during your 4th voicings, like if you know some movement, they might not always be perfect 4th. So for example, here, this is not a perfect 4th, right? We have a perfect 4th here, but not here, okay? But that's okay. Any sort of 4th is no problem. That will make your sound good. So again, if you're soloing, and again, I mean, I'll get into it in a second, but your 4th voicing. So how do we play 4th voicings for your 3 major chords, and not major, music major, your 3 like general 7th chords. Okay, that was a stupid pun. But anyway, so your minor 7th chord, right? What you can do, if you have a C minor 7th chord, root, 4th. Now, you're not playing the 3rd in there, right? If you're playing your 4th voicing, but look what happens if I move up my scale. I'm just moving up diatonically in 4ths. So this is how you can create movement with your 4th. So if you take your C Dorian scale, man, this episode is good. I'm feeling it today. Right? You take your C Dorian scale, you create a 4th voicing from that, and you simply move up your Dorian scale, playing all notes from the Dorian scale. See this? Fantastic, isn't it? So any sort of minor modal tune that you're going to be playing, you can adopt this strategy to solo over, right? Same stuff there. So obviously you can hear the sound of my fourth voicing. I'm going to get into my right hand lines in a second, don't worry. But they really go hand in hand, okay? So many people think, when you want to get a modern sound, you automatically go to your right hand first, which is it's understandable. I did the same thing. But in order to get the essence of the modern sound, your left hand is extremely, extremely important. McCoy's left hand was doing so much stuff, like, moving around, moving into different keys, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. But without that left hand, like if you're playing traditional rootless voicings, like if I'm playing a rootless voicing, if I play this is not going to necessarily give you a modern sound. Like you got to throw some extensions in there, some fourths. That's going to give you the modern sound, not these traditional types of rootless voicings, movements, right? That's more for bebop, stuff like that, and kind of, a hybrid of bebop and jazz and things like that. But so fourth voicing. So for your minor, that's what you can do. Very cool thing. Now, the cool thing here is that for your minor seventh chords and your dominant seventh chords, you can use the same movements. You ready for that? Did you think I left? So you can use the same movement. So for an F7 chord, remember, anytime you have a dominant chord, you can take any sort of voicing from the minor, a fifth above, right, your relative to minor, and you can use that voicing to create a sus sound. So before, we were playing C minor fourth voicings, right, moving up. Now, if I have an F7 chord, I can take the same sequence of chords and use them to play over my F7, right? So I'm thinking C minor, well, not personally, but you can think C minor, right? Let me use my right hand so you can hear the sound. Doesn't that sound fantastic? Like that's a modern sound immediately. So if you're playing some sort of modern original, or you're playing, Wayne Shorter tune, or any sort of more progressive tune or jazz standard, take any dominant chords, again, any minor chords, use your fourth voicings. Any dominant chords, use the fourth voicings relative to that dominant chord, right? A minor above, right? So here's my F. Whatever. So that's going to give you the sound. Okay, that's number 2, fourth voicings. Number 3, all right. Hexitonic patterns are in JPS main course curriculum. You heard all about that in the sponsorship. But I'm going to give you one today because there's lots. There's lots of hexitonic patterns. And patterns, if you talk to a sax player, they'll give you days and days of patterns to play. Okay, not in a bad way. I'm just saying, like, it's kind of it's cliche thing. Like sax players are always practicing patterns, right? Because of Coltrane, just like blowing their brains out. It's kind of funny, but very useful, very, very useful. I'm not making fun of it, but it's just funny because you always hear them practicing patterns, right? Hexitonic pattern is basically hexitonic scale in general is 2 triads put together. So again, McCoy, very, very famous for this. If you take a hexitonic triad, if you take 2 triads, so if we take our major triad and our flat 7 major triad and we put those together and we create a scale, that's basically what we get. So there's 2 ways to do this. If I use these notes over my left-hand voicings, let's say for the key of F, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? Hexa, 6, okay? I have this certain type of sound. So basically, the way you can think about it is you're leaving out the 6. You're just not playing the 6. Don't play the 6 at all. Don't play that note. You hear the sound that's creating? There's no bebop approaches, right? No bebop approaches. So we're not using half steps. We're just using these movements with these 6 notes. That's going to give you an hexatonic. That's going to give you a modern sound, right? Okay? Did you hear that? I mean, that's completely different than me going, it's completely different, right? There's no approaches. It's actually, some would argue it's easier. And you hear so many modern players or people will start using the pentatonic scale and hexitonic scales super early on in their jazz piano education career, or learning process, I should say, because it's easy. But, I have a problem with that because you're learning these advanced modern sounds without actually learning bebop language in the process of actually improvisation. You just have these 6 notes, which isn't a bad thing necessarily. But again, when it comes to playing bebop, that's a completely different language. And if you're playing an old jazz standard and you start playing like this, people are going to be like, what the heck? It just doesn't fit. It doesn't fit, okay? So, the first way that I was talking to you about is using these 6 notes, right, to create your modern sound. So that's absolutely what you can do. The more targeted way of doing this, that's more for beginners, but what McCoy does, and a lot of people do as well, what I was talking about the saxophone players, is that you take your triads and you're creating different triadic patterns out of these 2 triads. You hear what's happening? So a really good way to kind of demonstrate this is to go up the scale with inversions. Right? I can come down. Woo, flubbing a lot of notes here. Right? And then we can start to do things like this. Right? And then move up in different types of movements. So I started on the 3rd here, I can go. And then I could do. So all these different types of patterns, I mean, guys, it's endless. It's absolutely endless. So I have so many different types of patterns I put into JPS, for the members and things like that they can get a hold of. But again, it takes you down this rabbit hole. It's just like there's so many different types of patterns. What I'd recommend to you is just think about the 2 triads separately, right? So think about these 2 triads as F major triad and E flat. So when you go to play a line, you're basically going to play a 4-note pattern. So you want to play 4 notes out of the triad, because then it'll even up your line to begin with, instead of going. That would be more of a triplet feel. Triplet, triplet. If we're playing an 8th note line, we want to, unless you want to displace it, right? That's very, very advanced, right? If you're playing, that's a displaced rhythmic figure because you have a triad of 3, but you're playing a grouping of 4, so you start your E flat on the 4th, 8th note, right? I'm not going to get into that right now, but you could do that if you're a more advanced player listening to this. But again, play 4 notes within the triad, and then go to your next triad. So it would be E flat wherever it is. And I would take the notes, I wouldn't jump. Like I wouldn't necessarily jump. You can do that. Try and stick to the surrounding notes in the next triad. You see what's happening? So you can jump within the triad. So I could go, so I went down, or I could jump back up here. I could do that. Right? So wherever you leave off in that triad, whatever that 4th note is, sorry. Wherever that 4th note is, then you jump to the closest chord tone, right? Sorry. That's an example, okay? So that's how you would use that. And again, I don't like all triadic improvisation because it sounds very stiff to me. Like, I mean, I love it. Don't get me wrong. I love it. Personally, though, this is my own personal self-expression. I like combining both. So I'll definitely use more of a scalar approach combined with the triadic approach. This is just my personal self-expression of my soul through music, okay? It's not saying anything else. So I'll use some triads sometimes. You know? Like you can definitely hear the triad movement when you start doing it. And then so many people will just move up and down with patterns. It sounds like an exercise to me, right? Like people will play that as an improvisational line, and it's, I don't know, it's not really a line to me. It's just like an exercise, right? So I don't want my plan. I want to spontaneously create music through my soul without regurgitating my practice, is basically what I'm trying to say. If it comes out naturally, then fine. But like if I move past an octave, that's not really probably what my soul wants to play, if you get my drift, okay? Anyway, that's number 3, all right? It's hexatonic triads. Number 4 is going to be pentatonic patterns. Okay, so your pentatonic scale, right? We have 5 notes now instead of 6, okay? Here's my C minor pentatonic. Now, what do? Is we do the same thing we did with our hexatonic triad, is we create 4-note patterns out of our pentatonic pattern. Because this is a 5-note scale, penta, right? 5 notes. If we were to play a 5-note pattern, it doesn't fit equally with a 4/4 tune, right? If we're playing 8th notes, okay? So we condense our pattern into 4 notes. Right? Same thing coming down if you're coming down. So the pentatonic pattern, so many people, guitar players, I think it's easy on guitar to do that, play these pentatonic patterns. You hear these pentatonic movements all the time, right? With your major pentatonic as well, right? So many people use that kind of lick where you're just going up and down the pentatonic patterns. It's not really my bag, you know? But again, the way to use your pentatonic patterns is going to be through mixing of movements and the way you do it. So, for example, you don't always have to go 1, 2, 3, 4, right? You can go 1, 3, 2, 4, right? So the numbers equate to the way the movement, right? That would be a pattern. Let me see. So, you know, that would be a pattern. There's hundreds of different patterns. No, let me see. There it is. You know, and again, it just goes on and on and on. And again, you can practice your patterns to infinity, right? But the way you want to actually apply these things is I would, again, take these notes, think about the patterns in groups of 4. And if you go down, you want to make a grouping of 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. And it can be anything, really. You just want to kind of break it up. And this is how you can start to get into it slowly to get some sort of modern sound. You know, and again, just make sure you're moving back and forth, and it's going to sound fantastic, right? If you do want to dive into more of the structured organization of learning pentatonics, you can definitely start to practice your numbers and your patterns. And again, that can take you into a whole huge, deep rabbit hole of movements and patterns if you're going through all the keys. I mean, goodness, it can take years, you know what I'm saying? But again, to just try to achieve this, and again, as you notice, I'm hitting the F not intentionally, but just because I like it in there. That's habitual. I love this sound. This is basically more of a kind of a scale I use. Not really a scale, but just a sound. This right here. There's probably a name for it. You can have a lot of fun with this kind of stuff. So again, the pentatonic scale can also work differently over different types of chords. And again, this is such a huge, deep rabbit hole too. If I take a major, G major pentatonic scale, and I play it over F, right? This right here is creating a sharp 11 sound. So basically, I'm playing an F7 sharp 11 sound, but based on pentatonics. And again, if I leave that E out, obviously you don't want to play the E because you're playing over a dominant chord, but you can take this pattern of 4 notes, create kind of sort of a pentatonic scale out of it. You know, stuff like that, and have a really nice sound there, right? So, and again, if you're doing, let me see, if you're playing over an F major 7 chord, then you could add that E in there, right? That would give you your full pentatonic scale to actually move back and forth. That's more the traditional way to do it. I don't know why I started with the dominant chord, but you know, people will tell you to play your 2 major pentatonic scale over, you know, an F, so one step below. You know, that's the sound it's going to create there, right? So that's your F major 7 sharp 11 pentatonic scale. So again, as you start to shift and move, right, your pentatonic scales, you know, over different chords, right? These types of sounds, you can actually just experiment, right? This will give you more of a sus sound. This is going to be definitely different. Right? If I'm playing an F7 dominant, this is going to be sharp 11, flat 13, flat 7, flat 9, sharp 9. Right? Think about that for a second. Obviously, you'd have to match your sound with your voicing, right? That's going to be pretty out, right? So you can start to play around with it. Again, there's so many different ones. This one's really nice. And again, you can experiment. This is where you can really start to explore. So I should talk about that right now. So anyway, going into these different types of movements, right? You can obviously move around your pentatonic scale. This applies to hexatonic scale as well to create different atmospheres and sounds based on the pentatonic scale that you're playing. Now, movements, pentatonic movements and patterns, you don't have to move up here. You can shift. So many different sounds are created by shifting your pentatonic scale. So what do I mean by that? You'll hear Coltrane excuse me, play different patterns, right? I'm sure you've heard this before, right? That type of pattern. So that's a movement of just a 4-note major pentatonic scale going up by minor thirds. And that's a very, very common pattern that you hear a lot, is a minor third movement, basically going up diminished, right? So I'm playing my major pentatonic on all of these, starting on all these keys. Right? Another one you might hear is this is the same over all 3 of these, right? So I'm going, so basically I'm playing, this is more for a hexitonic pattern, right? There's my F, there's my A flat, there's my B, there's my D, right? And you can come down, right? And again, you all these, there's so many different types of movements. I mean, right? This is going down into my F. Let me see. This is for my G, right? A. So you can go up and down in half steps. There's so many different types of movements. And again, you'll hear these players, so they'll be playing one pentatonic scale and then move into different keys by shifting the intervals that they're playing in, right? And this is all happening within the pattern. So they might go F, A flat, B, right? And then resolve back to the F, right? McCoy was doing this a lot, shifting his 4th voicing, right? He might move down by a half step, move into E. You know, so he's shifting around, and again, there's so many different types of movements. Right, this is a common one, right? So you're going whole step, half step, whole step, half step, whole step, half step, right? It's just endless. And again, I can't even, I'm at 40 minutes here. I can't even get into all the logistics of this, but that is number 4. That's pentatonic patterns. You can move around, play around with it, explore, have a ball. Okay. I'm sure you'll get into a lot of great stuff. You can spend years on this. Okay. Number 5 is going to be 3. These are going to be some great beginner scales. That definitely require attention. The altered scale, okay, is getting lots of extensions. So if I were to play a C altered scale, this is going to be flat 9, sharp 9, your natural third, sharp 11, flat 13, flat 7, and 1. So over dominant chords, it's a very easy and quick way to get some sort of movement extensions in your playing and get your out sound. Again, you need to be careful with your left hand if you're playing a C rootless voicing. This is going to sound kind of strange. I would play your altered voicing, right? It's going to fit your altered scale, right? Who would have thought? Okay? Immediately in a 2-5-1, you can play the notes however you want, any sort of pattern. You can play whatever pattern you want. It doesn't matter. You can move up in scale, however you want to play. It's completely up to you. So that's the altered scale. One of my students one time thought about the altered scale as a half step up, melodic minor scale. So if you think you can get crazy with all these different ways to think about things, but if you want an easy way to try and play a C altered scale, you play a D flat I keep saying melodic minor. Yes, melodic minor. Yeah. Melodic minor scale starting on C, right? So I'm playing D flat melodic minor, right? Minor third, major 7. Okay, so I just start that on C. So any scale you want. If you want to play a G altered scale, you would think A flat melodic minor. So A flat minor, there's my minor, right? And then I'm at G. So that's my altered scale, right? It's a cool thing because for like F sharp, for example, I'm playing G melodic minor, which is almost all white notes, right? Very easy scale to play. So like a G sharp, a G flat altered scale, you'd be like, oh, how do I play this? Be like, oh, melodic minor, right? And again, a cool thing about our altered voicing, guys, a little trick here is that if you think about the tritone rootless voicing, you're going to get an altered chord. So what do I mean by that? If a tritone of C is F sharp, I'm playing my F sharp rootless voicing. That's giving me an altered sound over the C, right? So I'm thinking, not necessarily, but again, you can think F sharp, you can think, sorry, I thought someone was knocking at my door. You can think G flat, rootless voicing, right? And that's going to give you your altered sound. So again, for some of the difficult keys that you're not used to playing in, take your tritone, right? So I can think either of the D rootless voicings. That's going to give me my A flat altered sound, right? So here's my A flat altered sound. And again, I would think A minor, melodic minor. You follow me? Right, to get my melodic minor sound. Again, for G flat, okay, I'm going to think the tritone. So I'm going to think B, right? I can play this. I'm sorry, tritone is C. There we go. So I can think C7, that's going to give me my altered sound, right? So I can play this, and again, my melodic minor, G melodic minor. So that's a quick, easy, get around for changing keys quickly if you need to, a good way to kind of learn it and ingrain it. So your half whole, where are we at here? Man, I got to make sure I don't run out of camera here. We got 14 minutes left. This is a long one. All right, so we got half whole. I got to wrap it up. Half, whole step, half step, whole step, half step, whole step, half step, whole step. So what does this give you? Flat 9, sharp 9, natural third, sharp 11, natural 5, natural 13, which is a really nice difference from the altered, flat 7, and 1. I love this scale. Okay? Love that scale. Love it. Such a cool sound, right? My voicing I'm using over here, we want to reflect the extensions of the scale. So again, you can use any sort of sharp 11 voicing. You can use your altered voicing. You can use a flat 9 voicing. You can throw your, I love this voicing, natural 13 with flat 9. Man, I love that. Oh, whew, gets me going. I love it. So this is, I love this voicing here. You got the half step and then the flat 9. I love this voicing as well. This is amazing. God, there's so much great content in here. So this is an amazing voicing. Oh, so many people play the flat 13 with your altered voicing, which is amazing too. That natural 13 gives such a clash and a rub if you want to really, really outsound. Like, listen to that. I mean, I love that line. I should write a tune off that. You can play all these repetitive patterns that I was just playing. It sounds like what's that album off of Black Codes? That track off Black Codes. I forget what it's called. Anyway, there's this one Winton tune that he wrote off Black Codes. It kind of sounds like, I think maybe Chambers of Tain. Anyway, that's your half whole. Your whole half, okay, is more commonly known as your diminished scale. Whole, half step, whole step, half step, whole step, half step, whole step, half step. Woo. I love using this whole half over, I think this is a Kenny Kirkland thing, over a minor chord. So again, you're going to be like, what? So over a C minor chord, you can play C minor major. Or you can play with the 13 in here. You have this basically flat 5 in the chord, so it's like a half diminished sound with a major 7, right? So you got your diminished triad, and then you have your major sound here. Such an amazing sound. So over C minor. Love that sound. So you can do either or. What was I playing? Yeah, sometimes I'll throw the natural 13 there in there as well. Such a cool sound to use. And again, just for a diminished chord, like if you're soloing, you should always know your whole halves for all your diminished chords, right? Starting on all the keys. So on and so forth. It's symmetrical. So once you know one, you'll know 4 of them, right? And then you just got to move up 2 half steps. Practicing, C sharp, same thing. Where are we? D diminished, F. See what I'm saying? So that is number 5. We got altered, half whole, and whole half. I got 10 minutes left. We got number 6 is going to be extensions of any kind reflected in your right hand. So if you're playing any sort of you need to think about your voicings as not just, they are something too. Like you need to put both of your hands together in a unanimous way so they're working parts. Like you should think about them as 2 different gears, right? So if you have this, if you're playing a C7 voicing, yes, and you have like this, right? Your right hand should want to reflect those notes because your left hands are bringing out those colors in your voicing. Now there's no right or wrong way to do this. Like I'll just play the notes, right, based and then any of the other notes I'm not playing, like the A natural, I can throw in there. And then I'll put the other notes from the chord tones in there as well, right? C, E, G, B flat, right? I could skip the 3rd there. Oh, I'm not playing that E flat, but that's okay. Sorry, I was having a little fun. So reflect the extensions that you're playing in your left hand. Again, if you're playing something like this, sharp 11, natural 13, sharp 9. Woo! I love this. I actually don't use this much, but I should. I should practice this today. I love the sound of the natural. It gives sort of a sharp, this mystical feel, right? Listen to this. This would be a cool palette, and then you have a horn come in, just saying. You could have a trumpet up there or something as the main melody, and then you're creating this palette. That's out. So, always reflect the extensions in your right hand that your left hand is playing and vice versa, okay? Number 7, the final one. Reharms are so great to get some sort of modern sound. And anytime you use a reharm, you need to know your reharms, obviously. I'm not going to go over them in this one because there's lots of podcasts on reharms. But when you solo over reharms, it's going to give you an out sound, right? So if I'm soloing over the blues and I solo over my tritone sus reharm, whoops, sorry. Yeah, no, B. And then I shift back into my B flat. So as you're playing reharms, right, you want to solo over the reharm. So I would probably figure out the reharms first. If you solo over your 2-5 to the 4, right? Even in bebop lines, it's going to sound a little bit more out. What am I trying to play here? There it is. That's a very good teaching point. Like if you hear something and it's not coming out right, just stop and just, go for it. I'll even do this on gigs. If I don't play something, I'll be like, screw it. I'm just going to keep trying until I get it right. So again, reharms, like I'm dropping down by half steps. And again, your sus is a reharm, right? All these different types of reharms, you're soloing over these reharms, right? Your 2-5, sus. You could go, right, if you solo over that reharm. So any type of reharms you start to get into, you want to solo over, right? You want to solo over them and use them in your right hand to reflect the reharm, and that's going to help the reharm come out so much more, obviously, during your improvisation, help that out sound come out so much more as well. So hope you guys enjoyed that. There was so much information there. I'm tempted to make this a lead magnet, even though we were going to kind of switch up stuff with the lead magnets, but I think let me see here. Sus sound, fourth voicings. I will put this into a lead magnet. Okay, so if you guys go to jazzpianoschool.com/podcast 121, you can download the examples for what I've played today. Not full examples, but obviously I'll demonstrate the sus sound, the fourth voicings, hexitonic. So you guys have that in a lead sheet of notation because there's so much content in this one. And I hope you guys enjoyed that. Again, thank you so much for listening. I think that was a great episode. A lot of people had recommended this type of episode, so I hope that helped you guys. And I will see you in the next one. And as always, have a fantastic day and happy practicing.